Hi, my name's Ed Nolan and I'm an A-level psychology teacher, and today's video is going to be about evaluating the different approaches in psychology by looking at their applications. As you can see, there's some pictures on the screen now. I wonder if you can guess which applications go with which approach. Right, let's say a psychologist has an idea. His idea is that the chemical components of Marmite will help with intelligence. I'm not sure what chemical components they are, probably the yumminess, because I absolutely love Marmite. Anyway, so he has this idea, he creates a theory, might even do some research, he writes it down, he puts it in a journal article. There we go. And then one day a teacher is reading the journal article, as they do with a blanket on their couch. They just lie there, they read the article and think, here is an assumption, here is an idea. Marmite influences intelligence. So what I'm going to do is use that on my students. So there she goes and gives her students a nice gulp of Marmite every day. I'm not quite sure I could actually do that, but that's what she's done. And the result is their grades go up and they get fantastic grades. Well, what we have here is an assumption. Marmite leads to increased intelligence, a biological approach, and an application. Yeah, she has practically used it, and that's created an application. So a successful application, what does that tell us? It tells us that the assumption or the idea is valid. This idea of validity, meaning it is legitimate, it's true, it's real. And that actually we can give it a thumbs up. It's a positive thing of saying, yes, here is some evidence that it is real. It is not a research study on the assumption per se, but it is evidence through an application of practical use. So let's look at one in psychology. Ivan Pavlov came the idea of making associations. He got his dogs to salivate to a bell. Well, John Watson picked that up and said, well, hey, this is a great idea. Let's have a look at this. I'm going to call this classical conditioning, the assumption of classical conditioning. We assume that we learn through associations. Well, another American called Joseph Wolpe picked that up and said, well, let's have a look at classical conditioning. Hey, I think I can use this. And what he did was he used classical conditioning to gradually introduce his clients to a feared object when they had a phobia of that object. And by doing that once, associating it with relaxation, they were able to engage in the feared object, like putting a spider on their hand. They can do it. Yeah, that is an application. So we give them a thumbs up and say, yeah, look, classical conditioning has been applied by Joseph Wolpe, systematic desensitization, it's legitimate, it's true. Brilliant. Now, remember, for our specification, you've got to go beyond just the therapy you have taught. So application is through therapy. So for instance, you've done dream analysis as part of the psychodynamic approach. Well, obviously, psychodynamic is more than dream analysis. And we can look at something called psychoanalysis, which is part of psychotherapy, a broader range of things. You know, and biology goes beyond drugs. You know, they've used in the past ECT, electric currents through the brain. And that has been a use for the biological assumptions. So go beyond the therapy. You might want to think about education, about the behaviorist approach, how they use operant conditioning in education, particularly in primary schools, to increase learning and control behavior. You might want to look at sport and the cognitive approach, how a cognitive approach has been used in sport in order to improve performance. Likewise, we can say that with business and industry. And not forgetting the positive approach, you know, mindfulness is used in education, sport and business. So there are a lot more applications. Don't just think that the one therapy we've taught is the one application. There are many more. Okay, so if I have an application to a approach, it must be valid. Yeah, right, that must be it. It's valid or not valid, application or not application. Well, they've all got applications, so they must all be valid, right? Well, not everything is black and white. Not everything is black and white. There are questions we need to ask about those applications in order to make a judgment about the worth of an approach. So for instance, what are the range of applications? Sorry about that. Interesting shot. Anyway, what are the range of applications? So for instance, if we look at behaviorism, behaviorism is only good with very simple learned behaviors and is used, for instance, only in things like phobias and fears and anxieties. You cannot treat schizophrenia with systematic desensitization. So it's very narrow in its range. Psychoanalysis, only really used in therapy. Does it go beyond? Well, not really. So ranges, but when we look at the biological approach, cognitive approach, whoa, look at the range that you can use on all kinds of different things. So the range needs to be looked at, and the success. Yeah, how successful are they? Yeah, how successful really? Dream analysis, is it that successful? When we look at drugs, drugs is the most commonly used treatment for psychological distress and illness. Okay, but it doesn't actually treat the cause, but it is the most common treatment. You know, if we look at positive psychology, mindfulness, very, very popular. Is it successful really though? And so when we're saying an application, sometimes we can say, yes, it has an application like behaviorism does, but its range is limited. Or we do have an application here, but is the success strong enough? So what have we learned in our today's video? Number one, that if you may have a practical use for an assumption, it's called an application. And that a successful application means if you really can use it, it says it's valid, it's true, it's good. And that when we are looking at applications, we go beyond just the therapy, but all of the approaches do have at least one application. But some of the approaches have a broader range of applications than others. And that some of the approaches have more successful application for others. These are all the things that you need to take into account as you're weighing up and evaluating each of our approaches. Okay, thank you very much, and it's nice having you with me on the video.